To decide Pluto is not a planet for several reasons which we may get into in the course of this next segment, but it came to mind that Pluto rules Scorpio, the astrological sign Scorpio, and the 8th house, I believe, is what I've read. What happens here? Practicing astrologist Adele Ather joining us now. Adele, how are you?
Hi, Larry. How are you doing? Good.
First of all, explain to me, I know this is something you've practiced and you're an expert in the area, but can you give us a quick explanation of stars and planets and the connection and how they're supposed to be, ruling us?
Well, essentially, each planet represents a certain psychological force. And an example of Pluto, it really rules any sort of extremes, any psychological extremes. So in that case, you actually have with Pluto, certain things such as, sexuality, extreme killing, any sort of obsessions. Those are actually ruled by Pluto.
Wow. Now, when you say extreme, would that be because Pluto is out there itself? Is that why? Because it's on an outer edge most of the time?
That's actually a good way to describe it. I mean, its symbology perfectly coincides with its effects. I mean, even it's, that's one example because it's outside of our extremes of human consciousness to the point where it feels like it's apart from us. The other example is just even its name itself, Pluto being the Greek god of the underworld. It rules that level of things being on such a deep layer that we're not even conscious of it. So the symbology works out perfectly in terms of how it's used in astrology.
So that doesn't mean that's, if it rules Scorpio, first of all, is that a correct phrase to use, that Pluto rules Scorpio?
That's correct.
Okay, so if you're a Scorpio, that sounds like you are, this is all you do in your entire existence, is either fight these viruses and these urges or succumb to them. That can't be right.
Well, it depends on how much of a Scorpio you are. I mean, depending on your individual horoscope. But, essentially that is sort of meaning that's Pluto's description of being a planet of intensity. That very much fits the description of Scorpio being intense, being very penetrating in how they look at their, see into things and their viewpoints of things. So, that's it is very much affected by Pluto.
So now these astronomers and other scientists come along and say, oh, it's not a planet. Are we getting hung up on words here, or do astrologers look at this and go, well, now what do we do?
I think for the most part, most astrologers, I think they're getting hung up on words. I mean, we base a lot of our work on observation, and Pluto has had a huge effect in terms of astrologers' observations and making sense of things that it's really irrelevant. I mean, its discovery at 1930 was perfect with its timing because that was a very heightened Plutonian time as it's close to World War II. And that rules a time of extremes with the war, with the genocide, and the atom bomb. I mean, the atom bomb is a perfect example of Plutonian power, something that's very small but very potent and has a lot of impact. And that's exactly what Pluto is.
Right. So whether it actually is a comet or a dwarf planet or a big planet, it is what it is.
It's not really relevant. It all comes down to results, and astrologers have found results with smaller astronomical bodies, such as certain fixed stars, and also Chiron, which was discovered in 1977, which is debated if, an asteroid or what is it. But it all really comes down to that we recognize it has results and it has its effects, and it doesn't really matter whether you call it a dwarf planet or a midget planet or a super tall planet or whatever it is.
So I know all science evolves over time, including astrology then. So before, let's say, 1930, when we didn't know there was a Pluto, astrology would have been different. Pluto comes along, and you kind of rethink your astrology and your charts. Is that...
That's very true. Pluto was not integrated before, but once it was discovered, things made a lot more sense. Before Scorpio was, because before it was discovered, Pluto was discovered, it was ruled by Mars. And Pluto and Mars are very similar in that Mars is much more of a lower level of aggression and power. So it's actually considered a higher octave of Mars.
Right.
And so it made much more sense once Pluto was discovered that Scorpio was ruled by Pluto. So, and even if you go back into, older charts, if you're looking at something as an event that happened in the 16th century, things just become a lot more clear when you integrate Pluto into it. So, it is true that we didn't integrate before, but it has helped us by we do try to merge it with what we knew from the past.
So as other science discovers other things, because you mentioned there's a debate about another planet, and heck, even we heard there might be 12 planets, and that might be the outcome. Let's say it's the year 2525, and we all come unfrozen and we're around, and we find out, there's 38 planets. Astrology would look a lot different too then, right?
It would modify to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it really all comes down to, there's actually a lot of different things you can look in astrology, but they follow a different priority sequence, and Pluto has proven itself to be at the top of the priority sequence.
Okay, so Scorpios are still Scorpios.
Scorpios are still Scorpios.
They're not screwed over this, and they're not getting a break either. They're still intense.
They're not dwarves, and they're still intense, yeah.
All right. Interesting. Adele, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time.
Adele Anther, practicing astrologist. By the way, if you go to typhonvision.com, there's the connection there. If you can visit that website, TYPHON Vision, one word, typhonvision.com, find out more.